Our other main story this morning, another minister has quit the government over Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal agreement. Gyimah, the Universities and Science Minister, Our other main story this morning, another minister has quit the government over Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal agreement. Gyimah, the Universities and Science Minister, becomes the Our other main story this morning, another minister has quit the government over Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal agreement. Gyimah, the Universities and Science Minister, becomes the seventh minister now to resign over the deal. He's described it as naive and one that will leave Britain worse off. Well, Mr. Gyimah joins me now from our Westminster studio. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So we are just 11 days away from the meaningful vote in Parliament. Why have you decided to go now?
Well, I've been thinking about the Prime Minister's proposals over the last 2 weeks, and I sort of reluctantly came to the conclusion that we actually don't have a deal at all. What we've got is a deal in name only. We've got a wish list of aspirations which we intend to negotiate with the EU after we've left, when we've lost our voice, our veto and our vote. We will have no leverage. The EU will set all the timelines, and we will be going against 27 countries. My experience of the Galileo negotiations tells me that we are going to get horribly crippled by the EU if we go down this path. And once that hit me, it's not easy to resign. It's not easy to resign when you are doing a job you love in government. I just felt, it was best to let the Prime Minister know that I could not support her sooner rather than later.
Galileo is the EU's satellite project. Just explain to our viewers who perhaps aren't aware of the details of Galileo what it is specifically that you're so angry about.
Well, so Galileo is a sat-nav system for the EU that the UK contributed over $1 billion to. Now, before the ink was dry on the transition deal, the EU decided to boot us out. Now, Galileo is important to the UK because our military depends on the security and encryption parts of it, and a lot of that was built by UK companies. Now, the EU stacked the deck in such a way that the UK just could not carry on. I think the Prime Minister is right to say that we are terminating those discussions and we'll build our own now. But that is a foretaste of how the EU will behave in these negotiations. It is like going to play a football match where the other side is the team playing against you, they are the referee, and they make the rules as well. And so if you're playing against the EU and you're not on their side, it is very hard to come out in a position where your national interest will be enhanced.
I don't think anyone would say that this is the very best deal. The Prime Minister herself accepts that it's not the very best deal, but it is the only deal, and in any divorce there has to be compromise. We've seen Michael Gove in the press today saying that it is the best deal that's on offer. The Culture Secretary, Jeremy Wright, also saying the same thing. It ends free movement, it controls farming, we get control back of fisheries, we have the opportunity to create our own trade deals. Surely this is the best that we can do for now. Well, why can't you accept that? The
mistake you're making is assuming that there is actually a deal. These are the things we would like to achieve. I think freedom of movement credits the Prime Minister. She's done quite a lot of that. But everything else, these are things we would like to achieve in a negotiating process in which the clock will be against us. We haven't, as a country, after 2 years of the Brexit vote, even decided on the big issues. Where do we stand on independent trade policy versus frictionless trade with the EU? How do we resolve the Northern Ireland issue in the long term? What do we want to do on fisheries? What do we want to do on agriculture? All the big questions are still in play. So we are not at the end of a process, we are actually at the beginning of a process in which the negotiation is to come. What is being presented as a deal is where we hope to land in the best possible scenario. I don't believe that is credible. We are setting ourselves up for failure.
OK, so you're saying that a second referendum, a people's vote, can't be ruled out. So why don't you come off the fence and say what you want is a people's vote?
Oh, no, I've been absolutely frank about that. There's no fence sitting. I think what I'm saying is that if Parliament is deadlocked, we shouldn't rule out of hand letting the people decide. And I think that works, that is in the interest of both leavers and remainers. And that doesn't in any way delegitimize the first referendum. We all know more about the EU today than we knew then. And in a new referendum, we also know more about the terms of departure. So I think that if Parliament is deadlocked, this could be a way out of it. The Prime Minister has already taken one step towards this position. She's appealing to the country to put pressure on MPs to vote for her deal. Why didn't you let the country decide?
The Prime Minister has also said that a people's vote isn't going to happen. But let me ask you this. If, as is widely expected, the vote doesn't go her way in a week or so's time, do you think the Prime Minister could be the person to say, OK, well, now is the time to take it back to the people?
Absolutely. I think the Prime Minister could do that, and she could put her deal alongside a number of other options to the country. I think that could break the logjam. But from how I looked at it, this is the biggest vote possibly in my political career. And I just thought I've got to vote in the way that I think is right and the way that is in the national interest. And it's for everyone to do the same. And then when we get to the other side, there are other options that we need to think about, rather than focus on the false choice that is being posed, which is the Prime Minister's deal or chaos.
OK, so what would you like to see? I mean, you've touched on it partially. If a Norway model with a customs union was an option, would you be happy with that, despite the fact that, of course, freedom of movement is part and parcel?
Well, the problem with the Norway model is you sign up to everything, and you have no voice, you have no say, you have no veto. So the only thing you've achieved by leaving the EU on the Norway model is that you've left your veto in the room. And I think that kind of democratic deficit and loss of sovereignty is one that the British public would never really accept. I happen to think that as a country, given that we need, for our own ambitions, to have a preeminent place in Europe, we're either all in or all out.
You were David Cameron's parliamentary private secretary for a time. Do you think he made a huge error calling for this referendum in the first place?
Well, the referendums are unpredictable. You never know what question people are really going to be answering. And so even when I say there should be a second referendum, I am mindful of that. But I think he felt, and I spoke to him a lot about it, that there was going to be a time when the question about our EU membership had to be settled once and for all. Clearly, that is not the case. But I think what is missing from the debate, and was missing in the referendum campaign and is still missing from the debate, is reckoning with the public about the real trade-offs that have to be made. And I'm not saying just say it's a compromise, let's go for this. But every option involves trade-offs, and we've got to explain it to the public and level with people about what it is. And I think in that way we'll have a more mature debate. And I think those who say that somehow doing that would turn the public off politics are probably underestimating the maturity of our political democracy.